Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to Coaster Kings Radio. Today's episode is the season finale of season 3. We will be taking a short 2-month break after today. Today's topics, as you can maybe tell by title, we're spilling the tea, which is a reference to the T reports, the Themed Entertainment Index, which kind of just has us looking at a bunch of numbers and, kind of analyze what happened in 2020, the infamous pandemic year, how it affected which parks, what trends we saw. And after that, we'll kind of look at what we're looking forward to, new attractions wise. So
I think the T reports are we love the T reports. We read them every year. It's always a really fascinating thing. Like the day they come out, I kind of spend the day poring over them and analyzing the data. And for the 2020 year, it's pretty dramatic what you're seeing here. Obviously, no one needs to be reminded of how 2020 went, but I will say that the T report shows some interesting data that, compiling it and seeing it all very concisely situated in one place, it definitely helps gather the thoughts, and there's some nuances and things that are worth looking into and some differences.
But before we do that, let's take a quick look at some of the stuff we got on thecoasterkings.com. If you haven't heard it yet, last episode we discussed Desperado testing. We've got some pictures of that and a little talk with the maintenance of the complex on thecoasterkings.com. Another couple of new things that we've got going on is we're currently working on our 2021 throwback article that discusses the best coasters of 2001. So that'll be live for the next week or so.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the special events that are taking place, we are going to have some Hornet stuff on the website. We've got Horrorland in Spain. We've got obviously Not Scary Farm already, Hollow Scream in Tampa. Those articles are all live and ready for you to be enjoyed. And then, of course, we have our crown ratings from the last couple of weeks. We didn't do one this week, but that's because we were just busy with life as usual. I feel like that's the excuse in this episode, this podcast. But
lately it's all been moving related.
I mean, if you really want to know, our microwave blew up in our brand new house. There's literally always something. Every time we finish a project, there's a new project. So it's
always
that's
something.
just kind of related to what's going on. If you're looking for a bunch of other new content, we've got a lot of European articles live because of our trip that we took in July. We've got some other articles coming from Sven as well. He went to Moopart, Germany recently, and a bunch of other European parks, including the Swedish parks. So that and more coming to thecoasterkings.com. So make sure to check that out if you like listening to our podcasts, which we hope you do. This is episode 43 officially, and we also have a bunch of specials and mini-sodes live. Make sure to leave a review, 5 stars, on our Apple Podcast page to help us grow. And, of course, find us on all of our social media platforms. We've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, a bunch of extra Instagram accounts. We've got 4 of them: Europe, Florida, California, the regular, the Coaster Kings.
Yeah.
So all that, go check it out. Interact with us. Shoot us in messages, questions, ideas. What kind of articles, what kind of podcast episodes do you want to see? We're always here for feedback. And we look forward to hearing from you. And without further ado, let's dive into our episode.
I think unpacking the T reports,
it's a lot.
There's always a lot to consider. We're fascinated about not just this year, but the trends that we've seen over the course of several years. And those phenomenons that aren't so easily explained, but you look at them and you study the regions and things. This year is kind of the same in that regard, but it's also it's a lot more complex. What can be explained by looking at these numbers requires more explanation than normal. In fact, even the T report themselves said that they wouldn't change the rankings of the parks. Where the parks ranked in 2019 is where they've remained in this year's T report, because the point of the T report, which is really really what the T is about compiling attendance figures for themed entertainment attractions.
Which they do to see what management moves, what expansions, what operations have affected the theme park world as a whole. And usually it's like a reflection of like, well, how does the management like affect positively or negatively, the park's attendance, their financial status. And even though attendance isn't always an accurate reflection of how a park performs, I mean, Six Flags can have high attendance, but have some sort of business model where their actual profits aren't as high because they're giving away the gate, for example. It's still, generally speaking, especially for the larger resorts, which is what this list really looks at. It doesn't concern itself with the smaller parks.
Yeah.
Is to see like, hey, how is it working on a global scale? And I think the most interesting is that it's split up by region. So we have the U.S. North America region, which only includes like one Canadian park ever on that list. Then we have the Latin America Mexico region. We have the European Middle Eastern region, and we have the Asian region. And it makes a lot of sense because, especially from that data, you can really see in those regions who's competing, who's overtaking who, and attendance. I think, historically, the best way of really looking at that, because profits don't always mean the most, because obviously a park like Europa Park will charge a different amount than like the next runner up in attendance, but like their performance obviously has maybe a little bit more of a reflection when you look at ticket sales versus like actual dollar value, because like some parks may not have hotels, some parks may have hotels, that sort of thing, right? So I think that's what makes the Themed Entertainment Association reports so incredibly interesting every year. But what's even more interesting, like you mentioned, the ranking stayed the same because of 2019, because there really is no point for the first time ever to like discuss these parks and like how they performed in 2020, because basically, we all know nobody actually performed.
The attendance of these parks right now is not an accurate reflection of how they're being governed. So
I think the funniest thing is like every year it shows you the change from the year prior, and I think that's what's almost the most fascinating to look at this time around, is to see like how much of a percentage drop like did these parks have. There's a couple parks that they perform pretty well. I mean, there's one park in China, which I guess we'll get to a little bit later on to the region, but it's the Zhengzhou Fanta Wild Park that only lost 11% in attendance compared to 2019. I'm not sure that park opened in 2019, and it's very possible that they had a really short 2019 season. That's why their short 2020 season
I was thinking too.
Is so similar. But generally speaking, those are really, I think, what we're going to focus on today.
There's just some really interesting trends that, like, I don't know, COVID... This whole report reveals a lot of things that we already knew, but it reveals a few things that like maybe we hadn't known or thought about.
There was a couple of things that were unexpected. There were a couple of trends that the T reports really kind of like explained that I wasn't, like that we really learned from, obviously. So one of the first ones that is pretty obvious is that the Netherlands and Germany had in the European sector an interesting kind of development. There seems to be a little bit less of a loss of attendance. I mean, again, all these parks lost quite the attendance in all of a year. On average,
lost like 65%. That seemed to be like a popular figure for the annual attendance drop for different regions. Like I think 65 was the average annual attendance drop for Europe. Yeah, 65.
But then, interestingly enough, or 66 really, is that Efteling only dropped 45%, and their attendance was quite high. For 2020, they were sitting at nearly 3 million visitors, which is actually the highest attended theme park of all of Europe in 2020.
Except for...
No, it's still the highest attended park in all of Europe in 2020.
Oh, for 2020.
For 2020, yeah. I mean, they're like in the top 5 for 2019, but they're the top... Actually, the top 3 of 2019. But in 2020, they were the number 1 with nearly 3 million visitors, 2.9 million. And that's mostly because the Dutch government just allowed that park to be open for more days than the neighboring countries allowed their parks to be open, as well as the fact that Efteling, even though they took measures against the coronavirus, they definitely weren't quite as severe as, for example, Belgian parks or like the French parks. So it was interesting seeing that this resort, I guess for the first time ever, it was the highest attended resort in all of Europe.
It only took a global pandemic for...
I mean, they have been growing like crazy. For a park their size, they do pretty good. Let's see. And then the German parks are pretty okay as well. You'll see that Heide Park only had a 44% loss in attendance compared to 2019. Phantasialand only 51.2% loss compared to 2019. And then Europa Park a 56.5% loss compared to 2019. So overall, these are not the worst numbers. It looks like the French parks, for example, Disneyland Paris, lost 73.1% of their annual attendance. That's a pretty big one. And then
France, the UK, and Spain.
Spain, yeah, Portaventura World, 81.3% loss. And then Park Asterix, 50%, not terrible, but still more than the German and Dutch parks. And then
the
Park
Italian
at Warner
parks.
also 79.8, so 80% loss, pretty significant. Italian parks, interestingly enough, Gardaland at a 53.8% loss for the country that was the first to really have like an outbreak in Europe.
The first
I'm
European
surprised
outbreak. The Italian parks didn't
they opened
do as
again
bad.
for the summer. Yeah. I didn't expect those
All
parks to
things
have a summer
considered.
season at all. So that's an interesting point. The next point that we
Globally, the Chinese parks actually turned around the quickest. I guess because they spent the most. They were the first ones to have to spearhead
it's also,
this whole issue.
It's also the country that head on did the whole lockdown thing before other. I mean, we were still traveling across Europe and the U.S. when China was already deep into lockdowns. So interestingly enough, I'm going to pull the Asia list real quick here. Is that one thing we noticed a lot in 2020, and that's mostly because of inter-regional travel within China, for example, is that for the Chinese parks on this topic, is that those parks that were located either in like big cities or in big provinces did best with their attendance. So Shanghai Disney did well. OCT Happy Valley in Beijing did well.
Shanghai Disney was the only park in Asia to see more than 500 million people for 2020.
The 5 million people, yeah.
Yeah.
5.5 million people.
Yeah, 5.5 million people, whereas the rest of the Asia parks, nobody could achieve.
Shanghai was the only park to see the entire world park. Every person visited. No, but yeah, so that's the only park to actually crest the 5 million figure. A park that came very close was Universal Studios in Japan with 4.9.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Japan, their system of locking down was quite interesting because they kind of kept like doing complete lockdowns and like opening up economy, complete lockdown, opening up economy. Very interesting that international travel was definitely a struggle, but domestically there were definitely periods people could visit the parks. Still though, quite the major loss in attendance. We're looking at Disney here losing 77% of their attendance, and Universal losing 66%.
Definitely. Although it's interesting to note that in Japan, for the first time, USJ
was the highest
had the highest attendance. It had higher attendance than either of the Disney parks, where normally both Disney parks individually outperform USJ. And I think that you can chalk it up to the way that Osaka did things versus how Tokyo did things. Which I think from an American and even a European standpoint, you wouldn't have thought that there would be quite so many differences between the way these two cities handled things. But then there's a huge difference between how different parts of America and different parts of Europe handled it.
And different parts of China.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, China as a whole handled it, but the thing with China was just that the interprovincial travel was restricted quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if your province or city's area had like an outbreak, then and nobody there could leave. So that was, they really contained it into specific areas, which is also why Shanghai did so well, because Shanghai Disneyland is located in like a very, very big metro. It's, it's its own tier province.
It's a captive audience, yeah.
And so the same thing went for OCT Happy Valley in Beijing, because the Beijing park, amazingly enough, actually had a very minimal loss compared to most parks around the world. Their loss was only 23.4%.
Yeah.
They still managed to get nearly 4 million people. This is the Happy Valley Park in Beijing, strongly outperforming almost everything else in the chain. But that was very interesting. But again, that's because Universal Studios Beijing was delayed. So Beijing Studios was supposed to open 2020. That Universal Park got pushed to 2021, opened like 2 weeks ago. And then you had OCT actually being open to a captive audience, which really helped them. Another thing we'll talk about in a couple minutes is the new approach to economy by the Chinese government that really helped push it too. But what I want to point out real quick is that parks that got affected more by this, for example, are Chimelong Ocean Kingdom, despite still getting nearly 5 million visitors. Chimelong Ocean Kingdom in 2019 was China's most attended theme park, sitting at nearly 12 million visitors, which is higher than Shanghai Disney by about 500,000. Chimelong Ocean Kingdom this time took in about 700,000 less guests than Shanghai Disney did, and that's because Chimelong Ocean Kingdom was located in Zhuhai, which is close to Hong Kong and Macau. Clearly, Hong Kong and Macau residents were not able to travel to the mainland of China, and then Zhuhai is not that close to the city center of Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, which also kind of affected it, because that's really like a destination park. People from Shanghai. I mean, when you're in the Shanghai metro, you will see ads for Chaolang Ocean Kingdom. Well, you know what I'm saying? So people come from all over China, Macau, Hong Kong, maybe even Singapore, to go to Chaolang Ocean Kingdom. So that resort saw like that holdback for not having people from other provinces.
There just wasn't enough people in the immediate area to support the resort's attendance figures the way that.
And so I find it still
regions.
quite impressive that somehow in 2020 they still managed to get nearly 5 million visitors. That's a really impressive number.
I think that was the pent-up demand that was allowed in midway through 2020 once China had finally reached a point where they allowed the interprovincial travel again.
And interprovincial travel has been like on and off, depending on the region through all of 2020. I'm not sure how much of this attendance was before the lockdown, but really, I think the parks already started going down really early in the year. So this must have been later, towards the end of the year, they really picked up again. And in their
unlike
attendance.
America and Europe, where a lot of parks did
have like a
strong business the first
months.
2 months, COVID affected numbers in China immediately, but like they were already being affected by the end of 2019. So any of this recuperative attendance it's exactly that. All of the attendance in 2020 for the Chinese parks can really be attributed to how quickly they turned things around.
Interestingly enough, though, the sister park, Chaolang Paradise, located just about 2 hours north within Guangzhou itself, a major tier 1 city in China, their attendance loss was only 45%, and they actually had an attendance of 2.7 million guests. Which is, their attendance loss relative to their 2019 attendance wasn't nearly as hard, even though they're in the same province. And I think it has to do again with Chaolang Paradise is much more of a local park, a local destination, very, very within the province, and people don't necessarily travel to Chaolang Paradise from all over China, besides maybe the safari park. But Chaolang Ocean Kingdom definitely is much more of an international tourist destination. It really feeds off Macau and Hong Kong, and I think that's one of the reasons that our beloved Chaolang Ocean Kingdom saw that much of a dip, really. Another interesting park to look at are the Hong Kong parks. The Hong Kong parks ate some dirt. Hong Kong Disneyland took a 70% drop.
These are always interesting to look at. These are interesting to look at every year. When we went to Hong Kong in 2018, that was partially motivated by what we saw in the T reports, which was that there was this inexplicable drop. It was Hong Kong Disneyland and Ocean Park were the only parks in Asia that saw a substantial drop in attendance
over the years,
and it wasn't something that you could attribute to either one park because they're competing against each other.
A lot of people,
so people thought,
were over here telling themselves and us and the world that the reason that Hong Kong Disney's attendance was hurting so badly was because of Ocean Park. And the people were telling us that Ocean Park's attendance was hurting so much to the point where Ocean Park pretty much went bankrupt over and over and over, and the Chinese government, the Hong Kong government has been blowing in a bunch of money, is that Ocean Park was competing with Hong Kong Disneyland. But people are, for some reason, completely oblivious to the fact that right across the bay, like pretty much in a clear day, you should be able to see one another, is the fact that Chaolang Ocean Kingdom is attracting the most visitors of any park in China, in the China bubble, like anything Chinese, whether it's like, a city-state country or like mainland China, they have by far the highest attendance. And so people are, the Chaolang Ocean Kingdom opened in 2014. It's probably like the region's premier biggest resort. They have mainland China's largest hotel, which is the Hanking Bay Hotel. And so like this resort is really, really massive, attracting a lot of people. And it went from opening in 2014 with an annual attendance of about 5 million to in 2019 having
12 million.
Having 12 million
and
visitors.
Outperforming Shanghai
So
Disney.
people are over here like concerning themselves with the Hong Kong bubble, acting like two Hong Kong parks are hemorrhaging each other and are like competing each other to death. But really, right across the bay, you have Chaolang Ocean Kingdom that's drawing millions and millions of people internationally and domestically.
Another explanation for it was people were saying that Shanghai Disney was related. And it's like, well, first of all, they're far away enough from each other that you wouldn't necessarily chalk that up to like Hong Kong being affected so dramatically by a park all the way in Shanghai. But people just weren't considering that a huge marketing point for Hong Kong Disney and Ocean Park was attracting people from the mainland, and then
There was no reason
Chimelong
for the
Ocean
people from the
Kingdom
mainland to come over.
completely obliterated the attractiveness of Hong Kong parks. Why go through the trouble of crossing into Hong Kong from the mainland to go to Hong Kong Disney or Ocean Park
And
when you
this-
have Chimelong Ocean Kingdom?
And to make matters worse, the Hong Kong-Macau Zhuhai Bridge exists, which is the world's largest bridge and underwater tunnel system, which is literally a road from Zhuhai to Macau, from Macau to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
There is a whole road system that literally connects these. So, yeah, Shanghai Disney, I highly doubt Shanghai Disney had that much of an impact. I mean, the first annual numbers for Shanghai Disney weren't that strong because it opened mid-year. But I really, really think that Chimelong Ocean Kingdom opening in 2014, just 2 years prior to Shanghai Disneyland, that's really what marked the start of the decline of the
Shanghai
Hong Kong
Disney
parks.
had that dominating attendance. They were the most attended park in China for 2017 and 2018, but then by 2019, Chimelong Ocean Kingdom just spanked them.
Chimelong Ocean Kingdom's attendance is nearly doubling
It
annually.
was number 8
really
in the
impressively.
world, number 8 globally for 2019.
I mean, higher attendance than Islands of Adventure or
Staggering.
University of Florida, for example. There's
Yeah.
really, really impressive attendance numbers. But yeah, again, I think the Western world really likes to look at the Disney parks and at the Universal parks and kind of look at trends there. But I really strongly believe from our experiences in the region is that Chimelong Ocean Kingdom is the main reason why the Hong Kong parks are struggling. Shanghai Disney, I don't think it's needing to do anything with that. Like,
They're
really,
like one of
there's really no overlap.
They're aren't they like the number 5 theme park operator in the world, and then we have 2 parks in the water park?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a higher attendance than all of Six Flags or all of
They're
Cedar
much
Fair.
more of a regional company
Because
but
they have
destination status.
Between the 2 resorts, they normally get like 23 million people a year.
And we'll dive a little bit more into the Chimelong group in a little bit later on the episode because we're going to end this episode again with a quick look into the future.
Yeah.
Which of course Chimelong belongs into that section. So that's kind of how it went for Asia. But before we move on to the next region, there's one more really important point. And that's that the Chinese government was really promoting throughout 2020 and 2021 what they call the nighttime economy. Nighttime economy meant that restaurants, stores, entertainment, theme parks, the idea was that every company, every business would stay open later so they could do more business later. And that was something that was really noticed in the theme parks. So one of the reasons that the parks aren't hit quite as hard sometimes with the attendance figures is that some parks really took that nighttime thing and took it. Like China Dinosaurs Park created this whole nighttime show, which looks really cool.
It took a page
looks
out
very
of
inspired by Chimelong Ocean Kingdom.
Kingdom's Ocean Resistance.
Chimelong Ocean
nighttime
Kingdom has
show.
always done the nighttime thing. Chimelong Paradise and the Chimelong Water Park have done nighttime stuff, but they've been staying open late. I mean, Chinese water parks have been staying open into the night, in the dark.
Chinese water parks will open in the dark like it's nobody's business.
I mean, I guess European indoor water parks and stuff.
Indoor water parks definitely, but like
I mean, it's not dark late enough in the summer when those European
I guess that's
outdoor
true.
water
That's
parks
true.
are open. But so that's what's really, really impressive. And then generally speaking, water parks, while on the topic, took a little bit less of a hit because by the time that the water park season started,
I think
it was already when some parks were started reopening.
Water
again,
parks had less to lose
especially in
for
Europe,
a few
Asia.
reasons. First of all, most water parks are seasonal. Even in Florida, even the Disney water parks will close periodically in the off season. They don't need both Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach to run. Thanks to COVID, Universal had to close Volcano Bay over what would be considered a normal off-season window of time for a typical water park, but was somewhat abnormal for.
But one thing that is very noticeable about
Orlando.
water parks too, and especially in the Orlando bubble, is that just like in China, the destination water parks are the ones that are hit the most. Because
Yeah.
we're looking at Florida area, we have Blizzard Beach with a loss of 84%, Universal Volcano Bay lost 70%, Aquatica lost of 66%.
Regional water parks.
And Adventure Island lost of 80.9%. It's where the regional water parks,
Especially the ones further up north where their season started later anyway.
or the ones in regions that were a little more conservative, parks opened up a little sooner. The Texas parks, they weren't hit quite as hard. They were hit a little less hard. So that was also kind of interesting to me. Let's see, what is next on our list?
I think if we want to look at the amusement parks, the theme parks in the United States specifically, I think everyone knows that. I guess in North America, the regions that were hit the hardest, that had the most to lose, I think, were really around in Canada. Is noticeable because there's 2 parks in the top 20 of the North American park performers that did not open for their 2020 season. That's Canada's Wonderland
And Six
Flags Great America. So, and then the
another
California
thing is really,
parks
exactly. The California parks are incredibly noticeable because they were down for so long. They shut down in March, and many of them didn't even open.
It's quite remarkable how Disneyland,
year.
when you look at 2020 figures for Disneyland and California Adventure, you're looking at 2.5 months of attendance. And they still, I mean, it's just a testament to the loyalty and the love that, like I was reading comments on the T Reports in a Facebook page, and somebody pointed out that Disneyland still had higher attendance than Disney's Hollywood Studios, even though Disneyland was open for 6 weeks, and Hollywood Studios opened a $300 million dark ride. I guess Disneyland did too.
But Disneyland's opened literally like right before the pandemic. Yeah.
So Disneyland had a really strong
Speaking of that incredibly expensive dark ride, one thing that I found incredibly fascinating is that late 2019, so right before 2020 numbers started counting and the pandemic happened, Walt Disney World's Disney's Hollywood Studios opened
Rise of Resistance.
Of course, like the most sought after recent dark ride.
And we just wrote it today and waited 10 minutes.
We literally waited on 10 minutes today. Thanks to the standby. This is the unique period between like Virtual Queue being cut and Genie Plus being launched, which could be as soon as next week because that's when the celebration starts.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing here is that despite Rise of Resistance opening and having been open for the entirety of 2020, Animal Kingdom still outperformed Hollywood Studios by 500,000 visitors in 2020.
They give DHS everything, and Animal Kingdom
DHS
still has the numbers.
DHS opened Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway and opened Star Wars: Rise of Resistance, and before the pandemic, and somehow the 2020 final numbers, Animal Kingdom still outperformed. I love to see it because I think Animal Kingdom is clearly underrated, but I think it's really, really cool that Animal Kingdom stands its ground. It's still that park. It's still that bitch. Despite Hollywood Studios having like the 2 newest rides and resorts as of this recording of the episode, because Ratatouille opens in 2 days. But very, very impressed with that. And so I think that's really cool to see. That was one of the notes I wanted to make. Shout out to Animal Kingdom for being the OG. And then there's, of course, the thing that Animal Kingdom has literally just boats going. I mean, just buses going there. As for Hollywood Studios has buses, Skyliner, and boats way closer to all the resorts. I just find it incredible that Animal Kingdom still outperformed. Really, really good. Really, really cool. That's just a big takeaway for me from the reports, that Rise of Resistance did not push it. And I could have sworn when we were there, I mean, the park seemed generally busier than Animal Kingdom did the entire year of 2020.
I think it's just Hollywood Studios always feels
because Animal Kingdom
busier than it is, but Animal Kingdom really knows how to hide people in plain sight. But that's score.
Surprisingly though, I mean, if we're gonna look at like the loss compared to 2019, yes, Animal Kingdom had the 70% loss and Hollywood Studios only 68% only. So like there is a 2% like a relative increase compared to Animal Kingdom.
I think they still are expecting Hollywood Studios to overtake Animal Kingdom. Maybe in 2022 they expect that, but it's like, it may. It's just gonna take some time. I think. Hollywood Studios is constantly its own biggest enemy. The hysteria that was created around Rise of the Resistance has made a lot of people decide that they're going to wait and maybe not plunge themselves into the hysteria. Maybe because I think 2022 is going to be a really interesting year for Disney for a lot of reasons, and the attendance figures between the parks, I think, are going to have a lot to say. Hollywood Studios, on the one hand, is going to be complete for its first full calendar year of operation, where everything is complete. And I think without the Rise of the Resistance boarding groups, it's going to be a more attractive thing for people with the ability to purchase a la carte rides with the Genie app. There's going to be ways that Disney will create a more attractive, albeit maybe more expensive, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and the attendance could improve from that. But I still think at the end of the day, try as they might, they can't just make Hollywood Studios a more attractive or higher attendance park than Animal Kingdom just because they want to. But they can try all they want. But I think. And then as soon as The next thing that they do with Animal Kingdom is going to be a big deal, and eventually it's going to turn into like, well, Animal Kingdom is going to take their position back from Hollywood Studios if they ever lose it. Because whatever they do with Animal Kingdom next, whatever their next e-ticket is, it's probably going to be... based on the rumors, everybody knows an Animal Kingdom rumor about like what their next attraction is going to be, and whatever it is, it's going to be amazing. People feel good about that, whatever their next like major thing is going to be. And then from there, it's going to be like, well... Animal Kingdom is going to win back the attendance. It's going to win back the
Honestly,
public opinion.
I don't know if Animal Kingdom will ever lose the attendance record. Because at the same time, I think Animal Kingdom went from being like the park that isn't enough to do at to being the park where they have like arguably still the most beloved attraction, which is Flight of Passage. Everyone loves that ride. And it's the park that it's just every age group has to go. Like you have kids, you have to go to Animal Kingdom because there's the most to do, I think, for kids that are like also enjoyable for parents, where it's not just sitting on Dumbo the elephant, but it's like actually doing a safari and stuff like that. And I think Animal Kingdom has that that overall feel vibe that people are really starting attracted to. There's shade, it's naturalistic,
and once
it's
they
much
get their
more relaxing.
nighttime show thing figured out, that's going to be helpful too.
Yeah, I think so too. Another thing that I found very interesting about 2020 is how creative the industry got. We saw it especially in California with Knott's Berry Farm doing the food festival thing.
Or parks doing drive-thrus.
Well, yeah, I was going to get to that. So, Knott's doing the several food festival things, which is very Knott's Berry Farm. SeaWorld San Diego opening as a zoo only because zoos have different guidelines. Well played, SeaWorld, well played. And so they also did a drive-thru for their Christmas event, SeaWorld Christmas Celebration. And then Six Flags Magic Mountain and Six Flags Discovery Kingdom started doing their drive-thrus for Holiday in the Park, which were really big successes. They even continued it to be special. There was a Fright Fest special version and a 4th of July special version for Discovery Kingdom in Northern California. And then for Magic Mountain, there was a West Coast Customs special car show drive-thru where there was a bunch of specialty custom cars scattered throughout the park you would drive by, which was a hit. So that was cool. That these parks really had to get creative, because California wasn't budging. There really wasn't any money to be made. So that was cool. Let's see what's next on our list, babe.
I think from here on out, there's probably even more to dust off and decipher from the T Awards. I guess one of the only things that we may not have talked about as much is that the water parks, going back to the water parks in America for a second, that is another pretty dramatic reflection of regional government interaction and regional park, local management with parks, because unlike the amusement parks in North America, where just Great America and Canada's Wonderland had zero attendance for 2020, there were 6 water parks out of the
that
20
are in the top 25
that would normally be in the top 20 that were top 20 attendance bringers for 2019 that did not open at all.
But I think it's one of those things that water parks already have like a season that's barely profitable, and if you're going to cut your attendance or your capacity because of COVID, and then you have to cut your season, and then you have to staff everyone for a couple of weekends.
Yeah, getting the ball rolling on staffing. You get to the point where
it's like it's not going to be financially profitable to operate for the season, and I think a lot of parks figured it out really early on. Like, if we don't open by this day, we're not opening at all. And I think that's why we saw these parks that never opened for the season. But again, it was more of a water park thing really than it was a theme park thing. Let's dive into what's coming in the next year. So we'll start with Chamlong's Marine Science Park.
Oh yeah,
this will be the largest indoor park, of course, located right next to Chamlong Ocean Kingdom.
Great picture of it in
Hanking Bay. The cool thing is that this is going to house the world's largest killer whale exhibit, with the world's largest acrylic panel, which is going to break their own record for the largest acrylic panel that is located in the main park at the Whale Shark Aquarium. So that's going to be nice. They have several indoor exhibits and experiences. One of the main things that they have is a unique Chinese porpoise. What do you call that? Like
Chinese? Yeah, they said there's like rare Chinese porpoises.
Yes, and it's the first to ever be on public display. They have a whole giant exhibit that's being built in there. So the way that this park is going to be set up, it's a combination of like leisure like rides. There's going to be a giant simulator. There's going to be a giant show venue that has the killer whale exhibit, and then it has a 9 to a dozen, somewhere in the number range, part exhibit that is a multi-level, like under, like there's 2 floors, and like the lowest floor of the whole thing that doesn't have any skylight roofs, that's going to be a giant exhibit that is highly interactive, and it's going to take you through all these different areas from the world with like aquariums. It's going to be just pretty much like one of the biggest aquariums exhibits in the world, and that's, I think, where the Chinese purpose is going to be. And then on the second floor, you've got the amusement park halls, which will have, like a bunch of family rides, the restaurants. It's going to have the killer whale exhibit that has its own giant bubble, like very multimedia, high tech. I mean, it looks like a spaceship that gets parked next to the other theme park. It's kind of wild. And then they've got the new hotel, the Marine Science Hotel, that's already open, which is a really, really beautiful hotel. So that's coming. It was meant to be for 2019, became 2020. Obviously, it didn't happen. 2021 was like a no.
Yeah, this project was delayed before COVID got into the
because
picture.
The park's main structure was already done when we visited in 2019.
When we went in fall of 2019, the park. I mean,
was technically only a few months from opening.
Yeah, it was like.
Then it was supposed to open in early 2020, which obviously all construction stopped late 2019, early 2020 because of COVID. And then it was supposed to be May of 2021. Now they're saying fall of 2021, but like newsflash, it is fall of 2021, and the park is not ready yet. So I'm expecting personally it's going to get pushed to 2020.
Yeah, spring 2022.
But all the infrastructure is there. The bridges from the hotels to the parks are there. The entrance, all the characters, the booths, the ticket booths, the walkways, the doors, everything is like pretty much ready to go. But the inside of it, I mean, they haven't even moved the animals in yet, which they have been holding facilities for several years now. Do whatever information that you want. It's not necessarily as positive. That they have been having literally animals in holding facilities for years now, waiting for that park to be ready to move them into their permanent exhibits. So yeah, that's sometime for 2022. Looking closer to home, in the US, of course, we have Tron that's delayed. We have Guardians that's delayed. I am incredibly excited for both, especially for Guardians because it's a new experience. Love Tron, still very excited for it, but I think Guardians is going to be cool because of its massive size. And the whole like spinning aspect of it, that's gonna be fun.
2022 has a lot of like delayed gratification going on because as there was stuff that was intended for 2020. Obviously, we're talking about the SeaWorld Parks entertainment coasters, and I don't really slight them for
moving that over,
for pushing that to 2022 because 2021 was going to be such a weird steadying year. And so, I mean, obviously you've got like Universal comfortably opened Velocicoaster on schedule. It opened exactly when it would have opened if COVID had never happened. But that's not necessarily the best route for every park. Disney stuff was really only delayed. The SeaWorld stuff was being delayed 2 years, just is a lot. It was a lot for the regional park fans like ourselves to stomach. The Disney stuff is technically delayed for less time, but somehow it feels more insulting.
That's when a construction regional.
Yeah, so it's mixed emotions about quote-unquote new stuff for 2022 because it is going to be a lot of stuff that we should have already had operating anywhere from 2 years to 6 months prior. And then there's parks that are going forward with totally new concepts, announcements, and things that weren't even thought about or existed prior to the whole COVID thing. I think Six Flags Fiesta Texas's cliffhanger coaster, Dr. Diabolical's cliffhanger, was a huge surprise because there's really no guarantees. There's no expectations to be had, especially for regional parks where things are so volatile. You can always assume that a scenario like Florida, Orlando, Southern California, some of these regions are going to always be lucrative. They're always going to be tourist destinations. But with the Six Flags parks, Cedar Fair parks, sometimes it's just a matter of like, well, how quickly are these economies, these smaller economies that are not necessarily entertainment focused, like how quickly are these economies going to really warrant a major attraction? But Texas, man, Fiesta Texas has decided that 2022 is the year for a beyond vertical B&M dive machine with 3 inversions.
I mean, I think it's clearly a response to SeaWorld San Antonio's Texas Stingray, which is one of the biggest wooden coasters in the U.S. It's a phenomenal wooden coaster.
Yeah.
And I think that Fiesta Texas and SeaWorld have always been playing the back and forth game, and I love to see it because that's like their own little bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, San Antonio is an entertainment city. People do go there from all over Texas, if not just like the South, to do not necessarily the parks, but to do City Walk and to like all the cultural experiences,
Fiesta
dining,
Texas and
the
SeaWorld.
Elmo, like, you know.
They've always had an interesting relationship because, like, SeaWorld of Texas opened in the late '80s. It was the world's largest animal park. It had a lot of different components to it, and not everything was successful. It's had a very interesting gestation. It went from being a SeaWorld park that's also a Cypress Gardens and boardwalk and baseball attraction with like all these different kinds of like extracurriculars and stuff, and then they scaled things back, and then they kind of turned it into Busch Gardens. They gave it like this. It was the first SeaWorld park to really embrace.
If you ever look between, you have the extreme end of the Busch Gardens parks and extreme end of the SeaWorld parks. The extreme end for the Busch Gardens parks is Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and the most extreme end of the SeaWorld park on the same scale is SeaWorld San Diego. And then right in the middle you have SeaWorld San Antonio, which feels, especially back in the day, when like they were the first SeaWorld park to really start popping in coasters because it was a Busch decision. That's really the park that feels the most like in the middle. It's like a mix between Busch Gardens and SeaWorld.
It's fascinating because I mean, like Busch was really on the B&M train. They had kind of helped discover B&M along with Six Flags, and then as soon as Montu was open, they placed an order for Alpengeist, and Great White happened in that same transaction. Great White and Alpengeist were contracted in one pen stroke because they were just so confident that this was going to work. This is exactly what we need for Fiesta Texas, because that in 1990s, they needed it for Fiesta Texas because Fiesta Texas was ready to put some hurt on the situation. They were for sale at that point. 1996 was the last year that Fiesta Texas was operated by the Gaylord Opryland outfit before they completely bowed out of the Parks game. And then the Six Flags acquisition of Fiesta Texas, followed by then the premier acquisition of Six Flags, was a very prosperous and period of dramatic growth for Fiesta Texas. And SeaWorld San Antonio, or SeaWorld of Texas as it was called at the time, was ready to put it all out there, make some do some risks, some risky investments. At the time, SeaWorld was just like, SeaWorld doesn't do rides, but really we have things like Kraken and Emperor, and like the era of SeaWorld parks having roller coasters was really started with SeaWorld San Antonio's performing ride projects out of necessity. To maintain Fiesta Texas is, to keep up with the neighbors. So anyway, the point being is that Fiesta Texas has that San Antonio region has once again proven that they are ready to bounce back and prove themselves as a kind of a third theme park destination region where there's hunger, motivation, major competition, and a pretty strong sustaining entertainment component that is more than just like regional parks.
I mean, on the topic of SeaWorld, SeaWorld Parks Entertainment also has the leverage of having Sesame Street rights, and so Sesame Place and
Chula Vista,
so Sesame Place and in Philadelphia area. God, what's the exact place called again?
Isn't it in Trenton, New Jersey, or something?
Somewhere around there.
No, it's not New Jersey.
What is the official place? Sesame Place. I'm pretty sure it's Pennsylvania, but
what's
the official city?
A Philadelphia suburb.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Pennsylvania Sesame Place is so successful that SeaWorld's Aquatica in San Diego is being turned into Sesame Place.
And this was announced pre-COVID, and we were like, "Is this canceled?"
It was supposed to be 2021
but it's definitely
opening.
Still happening.
But it's happening now, and it's opening next year in 2022.
They topped off the little roller coaster.
Like I was going to say, they get stopped off the little roller coaster. And so that's going to be really exciting, especially because the park's location was like nowhere convenient close to the actual other park. So then having SeaWorld's Aquatica not close to SeaWorld, especially when we went, felt kind of weird because I felt like it was not that close to each other.
Oh yeah, we've been there
and
for some reason.
I'm like, well, maybe like the bus routes or whatever, but like the other parks like SeaWorld's Aquatica or like the Busch Gardens water parks are like literally hugged up against the main gates. But here, it's located a little bit further away. So I think making it a regional family park to compete with Legoland is much smarter than trying to make it like SeaWorld's second gate. That's a water park. I don't think it worked out too well for them. And there's a reason that Not Soak City didn't work out either in Chula Vista. So I'm really excited for Sesame Place, which is going to be a really large water park with a bunch of Sesame Street themed water slides. And then like a little roller coaster and a bunch of flat rides and the show venues. I think the park, especially the way it's situated and the size, I think it would lend itself really well to being a little theme park that does both.
I think it's going to be a lot. The stuff that they're adding, like the rides component of it, is going to look a lot like the Sesame Street area for Orlando's SeaWorld, but with a few more major rides, like a full size Well, they're getting a wave swinger, right? Like they're getting a full set, which is funny because SeaWorld has one too. They've got the jellyfish themed one, but you can never have too many wave swingers. I kind of feel like Orlando should have one. Even Busch Gardens Tampa doesn't have one, but I digress. It's going to be a really great project, and I'm glad that...
It's really cool to me that they do that, because the park's going to feel very fleshed out, because unlike the other Sesame Place, it has a moderate
it's pretty small.
amount of water rides, family-friendly. Aquatica San Diego really was a pretty major water park. Their slide lineup was pretty massive. So them having like a giant tornado and having racing mat slides and having a bunch of built into the hills like 70 feet tall water slides, it's going to be really cool that's going to be peppered in with a bunch of flat rides. And it's going to be like a much larger Sesame Place with a much more bigger presence.
It's a much bigger presence. Yeah, bigger.
And I think knowing how well the Legoland parks do all over the U.S. and especially Legoland, California, I'm confident that Sesame Place is a really good fit for the region. So I'm really excited to see how that takes off. I'm actually kind of excited to visit because we've been at Aquatica and I really want to see what it looks like now.
And do like a before and after.
God, that'd be kind of fun. We should do that.
So I guess there's also for not just 2022, because we are going to do some more zeroed in focus on 2022 stuff in the next season. But general Horizon stuff, we're really eager to obviously see more details on Tron and Guardians, but Iron Man at Disneyland Paris, which we talked a little bit about in our last episode, just talking about our Disneyland Paris visit and the things that we look forward to seeing on our next visit. And then, of course, the other Disney coaster project at Hong Kong Disneyland, Wandering Oak and Sledding Sleds, which is... I'm really excited for it, even though it's really just a dressed up Vekoma roller skater.
Yeah, but I'm excited for the idea of it for sure.
I just think I think it's just going to be so cute.
I think Iron Man needs to be discussed more because at the end of the day, Rock and Roller Coaster, it was a really really good ride. But just in general, it's a fast throw ride with inversions, very intense for American Disney parks. I mean, again, like European Disney parks, there's more intense rides on resort. But I'm excited to see what they can do with that ride layout and with that queue, and especially with the Marvel money behind it. I'm excited. What we've seen so far from inside the show building, it has like a tunnel, like an LED tunnel, kind of like Incredicoaster in California almost, where they can project stuff on the inside. So I'm not sure what to expect. Am I expecting a cityscape? Am I over enthusiastic to the point where maybe I'll get disappointed? Perhaps, because I think they can do so much with that, and it was already the better version of Rock and Roller Coaster than the one here. But I digress. I'm still very excited for it, and I think it's very, very needed for that resort. Speaking of stuff that's very needed for resorts, I think the expansion to Tokyo Disney Sea is really cool, because Tokyo Disney Sea has always felt like it's been landlocked, which I guess it technically was. Disney Sea is like really compact, really confined. It's one of those parks, kind of like Disney's Phantasialand, where like everything is multi-levels and like rides are literally like stacked on top of each other. Like Journey to the Center of the Earth is stacked on top of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, for example, which is impressive. And so now they are adding their largest expansion yet, which will expand the park by like literally 50 additional percent of the park. So like there's going to be Fantasy Springs, which includes a hotel, a Peter Pan area, a Frozen area, and a Tangled area. All in a more naturalistic vibe, which is why it's called Fantasy Springs.
I think they just wanted so badly. They've done a really good job of balancing the sophistication and the continuity of Disney Sea with
an IP
the innate need and desire for there to be intellectual properties.
From a distance, I'm disappointed that IPs have to be like... I mean, inserting IPs in Disney Sea isn't new, because of course we've got Indiana Jones, and we have
the Little Mermaid
area, and of course we have the Midway Mania that's like Coney Islanded, you know. So like it isn't the first time. It is the first time they were like, oh, it's like IP stacked on each other in one area.
This was the first time they're like, we're adding a new area, and
I mean, it sounds like Fantasyland, but like a Disney Sea version, which still means it's probably going to be a whole lot better than Fantasyland. Yeah. But it was a bit of a shock when they announced it. I was like, oh, really? It's going to be Peter Pan Frozen area? Like, what the hell is that even?
Yeah, it was. I was surprised. I was like, that sounds fake, because there was always rumors that the eighth port, which was going to be next to the Lost River Delta, and there was long time standing rumors that would be Frozen, but
which is funny because I think if they would have made that just Frozen, that would have made a little more sense in my head. Yeah. I mean, when they announced it, because now I've seen like how they're building it, and it's so massive they can easily fit 3 lands in there. Yeah. But in my head, is it 1 port? Is it 3 ports? Like the whole port idea, I kind of think was left when Fantasy Springs was announced, because Fantasy Springs does so much that I'm not sure if I can really see it as 1 port.
Fantasy Springs is really, and also the positioning of it in relationship to the rest of the park.
It doesn't flow
a major offshoot.
Yeah.
So it's really gonna feel like a park within a park. It's gonna be like their little Harry Potter Galaxy's Edge moment where they're taking an existing gate and adding such a major area that it's, to call it an area, like you said, to call it a port doesn't really quite cover what this area is going to cover. Yeah, because
that would be like calling Arabian Coast and Little Mermaid and Lost River Delta, which are all connected by like a little pond or like the waterway, calling it all 1 port. Like, well, there's clearly 3 ports.
Well, yeah, there's like 5 e-tickets in this.
Another thing I've noticed is like, I mean, I know the area isn't ready yet, but from the air, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a major water feature. It's going to be a probably smaller water feature because it's still themed to a spring.
Yeah, it's not going to be.
But it's weird that it's going to be
lagoon.
The first land in the entire park that is in the port once, first of all, really, because the rest are literally just all on waterways. Like they are like on the water. They're all literally ports. Like they are literally like on a major waterway, which makes it, you know, like they are touching
the overarching theme.
That's the whole point of Disney Sea, that everything is located like on open waters within the gates, you know, very beautifully manicured. So it's going to be interesting seeing the Fantasy Springs at Disney Sea. I am somewhat excited for it. The fact that it doesn't include a major roller coaster, which I think the park needed sorely, is a little bit annoying to me. But I'm also kind of like, Disney Sea, I definitely don't come there for the IPs that we already know from movies. I come there for like the sheer differentness of it. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to take Peter Pan, Frozen, and Tangled and make it like completely unique and not feel like Fantasyland.
There's a part of me where
does that
like
make sense?
The way that this area is shaped is it backs up right into Fantasyland and Toontown for Disneyland, and there's a part of me that really wants them to connect it and make it like a super park. I
mean, to be honest, the hotel there, I mean, it may have its own entrance to Fantasyland.
And I feel like it's just because the getting from park to park.
Wait, are they connected like that? I don't remember exactly how the park's located. Please hold.
The parks are not really connected. They're not really that walkable. You can, but it's just a lot faster to use the monorail. But I think it would be kind of amazing to connect the 2 parks through Fantasy Springs, especially since I think they're kind of a nice bridge between what Disney Sea is doing and the area of the park that Fantasy Springs will be butting up to. Not to say nothing of the fact that Fantasy Springs chews up all of the expansion pad left that would have otherwise been accessible to Tokyo Disneyland. I mean, of course, they had their huge expansion with the new Baymax ride and the Beauty and the Beast ride.
Yeah, it's so funny how close it is. I really do wonder. In my head, I'm like, I think the entrance is actually not between Nemo Sea Rider and Lost River Delta, but it's more between Raging Spirits and
it's going to be in between those. Yeah,
I mean, it was always kind of obvious that like either there or right next to Nemo and Friends, there was going to be the next port.
Yeah,
I kind of expected personally from being within the park, having a giant plot here, there must be e-ticket here at some point.
That's where Arendelle was originally going to be. That's the 8th port.
This is clearly where the 8th port may one day go.
Yeah,
but where Disneyland is going, Fantasy Springs, that is not a port.
Do you remember how confused I was when I saw the expansion for Fantasy Springs, and I'm like, this is not where I thought it was. I thought this was the 8th port.
Well, you were like, it's not going to fit. There's no hotel. I'm like, no, the hotel's literally on. It's and
then I was like, oh my god, this
like
is
the land
Fantasy
is
Springs.
Massive.
Yeah,
it's just funny looking at this is Disney Sea, this expansion. Like it's literally 50% of the park being added. So yeah, major expansion.
It's just going to be excited. Whatever they do, it's going to be an exciting
adventure.
And then of course you've got a little bit further down. The expansion for Super Nintendo World with Donkey Kong was officially announced today. As everyone likes to say, it's one of the worst kept secrets in the industry because everybody already knew about it.
I mean, yeah, you can literally see it from within the park.
But Universal, and they said, what did they say, 2023?
2024.
So that will be opening alongside Epic Universe in 2024, it looks like. It's going to be an exciting year for Universal.
It's interesting. That's a year after Fantasy Springs supposed to open. Fantasy Springs supposed to open in 2023, which now we're looking at concept art of it, which I'm trying to zoom in. It actually does look a little more Tokyo Disney Sea-ish with the waterways. The hotel is very Mira Costa meets Fantasy. Do I think that it's all kind of pushed together a little much? Yes, but at least it's...
Maybe it only looks that way from a bird's eye view.
This is very...
When you're on the ground.
This is very Disneyland Paris.
It's beautiful. Yeah, because it's that's the Peter Pan area.
But at least having Tangled and Frozen right next to each other, it is the same universe technically, so that's cool. Peter Pan, I guess, is not, but you know,
the Peter Pan part is so weird to me. Like I was really not expecting that, especially since they have the Peter Pan ride in Fantasyland already. But you know, they know what they're doing. I trust that they. And it's not like Peter Pan sells a bunch of merch either. Like I can't believe they're not just building like a bunch of Duffy rides and you know all the stuff that sells merchandise.
I'm surprised that it didn't expand the. Well, I guess there really isn't much of an expanding onto the open ocean, but the Cape Cod thing still is kind of like its own little,
Cape Cod
small little thing.
But it does well. Just I guess being the home of Duffy.
What else is coming? Are there any other major attractions that come?
The one thing that I think is gonna be
Epic Universe
for. Oh yeah, definitely. That's. I think we were talking earlier that like Epic Universe is still very like it's definitely happening, but I think the roster, what's actually going to be, I think Universal Studios Beijing showed us that like things can happen very last minute. Changes can be so quick. They had a whole area of the park that was going to be themed to SpongeBob, and then they decided to theme it to Kung Fu Panda after it was already being built. Fast and Furious was supposed to be a major opening day attraction, and it got completely canceled. My point being that like what we think is going to come to Epic Universe and what's actually coming to Epic Universe is going to probably be two different things.
I'm just really wondering because the new Fantastic Beasts movie comes out this year, and I'm really curious.
Secrets of Dumbledore.
Or early next year. I'm really curious to see.
The secret is he's gay.
I'm really curious to see if they're going to continue building the Wizarding World, and if it's going to have a Fantastic World edge, Fantastic Beasts edge, or if it's going to have a Harry Potter edge. Are they going to build the Ministry of Magic? I'm pretty confident because Hagrid showed everyone that like Potter is not done growing, and they have this master IP that they can fight Disney head on. So add the Ministry of Magic and add Donkey Kong and Mushroom Kingdom. Add those three areas alone, and you've already got yourself an incredibly competitive land. And then they're gonna, as of right now, it looks like there's going to be a very large How to Train Your Dragon land. I think those 4 lands alone make for an incredibly nice opening roster. It looks like we're gonna get monsters for opening as well, and then a sci-fi themed roller coaster
in the hub.
But then if you don't talk about like, oh well, you know those lands, it's not that much. This park is massive. It is larger than Epcot. Like it is a incredibly massive park.
The construction zone for the plot for the whole thing is actually larger than the entire Universal Orlando Resort
that currently exists. And so the park alone, like
lots of room to grow.
What is set aside for not hotel space, not parking lot space, no backway space, but literally just like parks and attraction space is larger than Epcot.
Yeah.
So it is larger than currently IOA and Universal Studios Orlando combined, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it's going to be a incredibly massive park. So I'm really hoping that they pull another IOA card where they can build a whole complete park. Yeah. And don't play the Disney game because Disney will build half parks. There aren't maybe quarter parks and just opens them.
Yeah.
I need them to stay with that like Universal Studios Beijing and Islands of Adventure and Singapore kind of like motivation and just build in a complete park, spend all the money and then just like let it run for like 10 years.
Do you think that? Because I think Ministry of Magic and Nintendo are by far the two most set in stone.
I think that and How to Train Your Dragon.
Do you think Dragons is still going to happen? And it's
a franchise they own that they haven't done much with yet, but it's like really kind of like universally liked and loved, and I think it's a really easy franchise to work with.
And I think doing like the
show that they did in Beijing is like incredibly popular.
The Shrek Land and the Madagascar Land, which of course is going to be replaced, those were executed really well, and I think they know that Shrek may be not as relevant as
Another
it was.
reason I think it's going to do very well is because it's internationally pretty well-known franchise, How to Train Your Dragon, and Universal, as of right now, in the Orlando Resort, lacks a modern family area.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss gets close, but like whatever the hell they're doing in Studios Florida, it's a complete nightmare.
zone.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
It's ugly. It's trash. I have no good words about that kid area. Sorry. And I really think that, besides Dr. Seuss, there really isn't much. Dr. Seuss is not an internationally known phenomenon. Like, honestly, I didn't know what the hell it was till I moved here.
Do you think they're going to... I guess my question is, do you think they're going to resist the temptation of making How to Train Your Dragon's Land into just a general DreamWorks land? Where they have
because
rides?
I think the way that they're setting up the park is really to build, like, the worlds. I think they've learned one thing very, very well from Harry Potter, and that is, like, build a world, build it well, and you will sell merchandise.
Yeah.
You will have, you have that bubble. And I think... come on, every major area opening at Universal and Disney parks now is all like...
One franchise.
It's one franchise, one world, sidelines are important. And I think that like building a park from scratch in the Orlando market, as of right now, the most competitive theme park market in the world, I think it makes no sense to build generic areas.
I also think How to Train Your Dragon is it's an attractive intellectual property because it's sophisticated. It's had 3 movies. They've all been critically and commercially successful. It's an intellectual property that grows with you. It's got legs. It's culturally relevant, and building a whole area. It's got a nice aesthetic. It has a nice feel to it. It's sort of like it's like Klokheim, but for families.
Oh,
and
totally.
We don't have anything like that in Orlando.
Not at all. And I think having a cohesive family area or like a land that is for kids and family that is cohesive. In Orlando, it simply doesn't exist. The best thing we've got is Sesame Street. When it comes to cohesion and Fantasyland, we don't have to talk about Fantasyland. It's completely and utterly a mess. So I really think that that's their one chance. And another area, the Universal Monster area, building like the little European city that's also on the back lot of Universal Studios Hollywood, that Frankenstein and stuff was filmed at. I think that is a clever attraction to build, or a clever area to build, because it's kind of timeless. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like an IP. It can be something that can be put together pretty well. And it's just kind of timeless. Walking through an old European horror city. Universal does horror best, and I think that's a really good area for them. And as of right now, it's rumored to have a Forbidden Journey kind of dark ride that takes you through several horror movies, but classic Universal monster movies in a gothic old style. And I think that if they're onto something. One thing that's really cool nowadays, if parks do it, if they create something that's non-IP and make it really unique, I think it attracts people just as much as something that's really IP-based. Because at the end of the day, monsters and horror sounds cool. Old people have grown up with it. But it's also a way for a theme park to really do something unexpected. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you use a franchise, you're all going to know that when you ride a Harry Potter ride, it's going to be a dragon, and it's going to be a broomstick, and it's going to be a wizard, and it's going to be Voldemort. You know what I'm saying? It's all kind of expected, because that's the whole franchise's point. And I think doing the monster thing, it's we kind of know what the monsters are, but doing a generic area and doing a generic ride for it, I think it allows Universal to really kind of play with opportunities that a general singular franchise that's more modern doesn't necessarily allow for.
Do you think they're going to... Because I think the most obvious thing from Epic Universe that's missing is Jurassic Park.
Or a good name. Oh, yeah, and Jurassic Park...
Had a good name.
I just think Epic Universe is literally the worst name. Universal's Epic Universe. Way to sound redundant.
I don't want to talk about it.
And way to overuse the word epic, because it's already City Walk, the epic center of whatever. It doesn't matter. Park name aside, can you ever repeat the question one more time for me?
Are they going to bring Jurassic Park to Epic Universe?
So as of right now, and this is more of a fantasy than it is reality,
is that realistic expectation or hope for them, but a pipe dream?
I think Jurassic World's Velocicoaster fit in so well. Islands of Adventure, they're let's put it here. But now having weird Jurassic Park, Jurassic World crossover area, I just want them to turn all of IOA's Jurassic World into Jurassic World. I want them to build a Jurassic World dark ride, water ride that Hollywood has, and have the Indominus Rex in it. And then I want them to build a satellite area in Epic Universe, which is definitely not planned right now. Nobody has any idea that will ever happen. But what I want is a Jurassic World Dominion themed land in Epic Universe, because Dominion will be taking place all over the world where the dinosaurs roam the earth alongside humans, and it's a great way for Universal to create an area almost like Galaxy's Edge, where they take the franchise and they create a whole area that is not based on a movie, but it's a continuation of the story that only exists within Epic Universe. So you can only experience that adventure off screen, on ride, at Epic Universe. And I think that at Galaxy's Edge and Hagrid's Magic Cruise Motorbike Adventure, there's a couple of attractions here and there in the industry that really like continue a story in a completely unique world built just for a theme park. And I would like for Jurassic World Dominion to be a satellite area of Jurassic World at Islands of Adventure to do that. Will it happen? I mean, it's likely not on a priority list. I think it'd be super cool.
I just think that Jurassic Park is big enough. There's enough to it. There's enough movies. There's enough material that they could take it and have it be in 2 parks. And I mean, it doesn't have to be quite as overarching as Harry Potter or even Nintendo, with the popular rumor that Nintendo will have presence in all 3 parks using 3 different game franchises. But I still think that, and I'm not saying they need to like clone the dark ride at Universal Beijing and put it in Epic Universe, but I think that there's room to tell another Jurassic Park / Jurassic World story at Epic Universe that takes place in the same universe, for lack of a better word, as Jurassic World / Jurassic Park at Islands of Adventure, but does a different kind of ride, a different kind of aesthetic.
I mean, if anything, I wouldn't even hate if they brought the Beijing Dark Ride to Epic Universe, because the Beijing Jurassic World Dark Ride,
it just looks really cool.
It looks so really cool, even though maybe theme it a little bit differently, make it less about movie 2 and make it more about like an alternative future. Universal isn't afraid to use the same ride system in the same park, because they do it. And I mean, there's Transformers and Jurassic World and Universal Studios Beijing. Those are pretty much exact same ride side.
I think it's only fair that all 3 of the gates at Universal have that Spider-Man.
Yeah, Universal Orlando Resort better have one of these in every gate. Yeah, no, I agree. So overall, I have high hopes for Epic Universe, besides the name. And I really think that the overall aesthetic,
it's not too late, Universal,
of doing a like modern celestial approach with lots of like lagoons and shows and making it very broad and very large. They really want to build something larger than life, because I think one thing that's very noticeable about all the Universal parks besides Beijing, because Beijing is quite large and quite spread out, is that they're all very dense.
Yeah.
The Universal parks are dense. The midways are not that wide. There's days where it's busy at IOA and I'm like over it, because it's like super clustery. It's especially bad in Potter, and I think that this is a really great chance for Universal to build something massive, big midways, do a giant parade like Japan does. I think this is Universal's like time to shine and create like all the things they were never able to do at the current existing Universal Orlando Resort. So I have really high hopes, actually.
Yeah,
I really do. I think they know what needs to be done. I think they have a pretty general understanding of what they're competing with, and if they want to get, if they want to one-up Disney, which is also developing all these attractions and stuff, you better just put a bunch of stuff in there. And I think Universal can really make it happen. They're growing quick.
I agree. I think that pretty much
sums it up.
Yeah, that sums it up. I'm really excited for Epic Universe. Basically whatever happens with Epic Universe, I'm excited about it, because
What's the current line? 2025?
I think they moved it to 2024 again.
Okay.
I can't remember. I don't know.
2024 is quick. That's 3
They're
years
very ambitious. Like, they had a very ambitious timeline the last.
I mean, there's already pieces on site, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like the Donkey Kong.
Maybe both Donkey Kongs opened the same year.
And, well, no, it was the Yoshi ride. That's what it was. Remember when we thought it might have been Donkey Kong, but it was like Yoshi ride is on deck, and it has been for months. There's a lot of things. The things that they're doing with Epic Universe right now makes me think that they are going to try to push for it to open in the first half of this decade.
I just really hope that Universal, in the process of working on Epic Universe, works on Universal Studios Florida, because despite the park's decent attendance, I just think that park just lacks the spark. I think Universal Studios Florida feels very old Universal, kind of dragging your feet, like, okay, there's a couple of highlight attractions, but a lot of like filler stuff that's supposed to be action filled, but just doesn't feel like high quality. Not to be shitting on Universal Studios Florida. I just think that the park needs like another major attraction. Please give me that expansion to Diagon Alley, which it's back on rumor mills are turning again, and then build me that Pokemon area. Do that whole
Pokemon,
like Nintendo World everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess with Horror Nights, it's like Universal Studios Florida really only has to do so much for attendance, because as long as they're the Horror Nights park, they're going to have exactly what they need to thrive. But I hope that I guess what you're saying, and I agree with you, I hope that their next couple of e-ticket rides aren't too far down the pipe, and that we'll see them in a reasonable
Because if you're going to
amount of
open
time.
Epic Universe, okay, so between now and Epic Universe opening, nothing is added to Universal Studios Florida. It's going to be a really wild contrast. Because you got IOA, I think one of the most densely packed, high quality amusement parks in the world even. Then you have Epic Universe,
where
like
everything
the
is brand new and spectacular, and then you have Universal Studios
exactly,
Florida.
and then Universal Florida is like, okay, well, this park is clearly the
Unless they want
right.
their flagship park to also be like handily the least good of the 3 parks when Epic Universe opens, then they need to add a couple of e-tickets.
Yeah, I think that
now and
Universal
then.
Florida needs the most help.
Yeah.
But it's not stuff that's very hard to fix. I think rerouting the entrance to ET to Hollywood Street and then turning the rest of Kid Zone into a major new area and then building one more e-ticket for Potter where Fear Factor is. That's honestly enough to make that park like twice as good in my opinion. Because I mean, it has good bones. It really has good bones, but it just it lacks like some of the sparkiness that I really like in IOA. I feel like IOA is always way more lively.
is such an impossible act to follow. Like even the best parks would struggle to attract, I think, attention when you have IOA next to it.
The problem is that
Florida,
like, Universal Studios Florida has always been so focused on like the movie making thing and the soundstage thing and like the simulator thing that. And Islands of Adventure was the first time that Universal really got to play with just an entire park and make it all like non-studio, but like make it just like world building.
Yeah, it's funny.
And I think they had so much fun doing that they can't stop doing it, so they keep building more. And like all the newer parks are kind of like, ooh, let's do like the IOA thing.
They just love.
But meanwhile, Studios Florida is still like technically holding onto the studios thing, which really doesn't work that much anymore. Like it's just kind of, cut it
They
out.
love the uninhibited playground aspect of IOA. And I think ultimately they're just going to bring more of that to Florida, Universal Studios Florida, because that's what they did with Diagon Alley. And they just have to allow themselves
It's kind of meant to go to their park and Diagon Alley not being there. Like, that's the reason I go. Not to hate. I mean, I still like Mummy and stuff too, but I just feel like IOA has this more to offer.
Yeah.
So this definitely turned into the Epic Universe, Universal Land Resort episode, but I'm not mad about it.
Well, I mean, that's definitely dominating our thoughts with, like, the theme park industry on the horizon, because Universal Beijing is brand new, it's open, it's ready to thrive, it's ready to kick some ass, and then Epic Universe and the whole Universal Orlando, like all eyes are on Universal Orlando Resort, because Disney's stuff is we pretty much know exactly what's happening at Disney for the next 3 years. Like, unless Disney's got some major massive surprises until there's just not going to be as much to think about or look at with Disney as there will be for Universal, like internationally. There's going to be a lot more interesting developments in the Asian Disney parks and like Disneyland Paris, of course. But then there's going to be more Asian developments in the Universal parks, because we're going to see more from USJ and a lot more from Universal Singapore, because they've got their work cut out for Singapore. They want to add all this stuff to Singapore and reconfigure some stuff and take out Madagascar and do Nintendo and do what were they going to do? Nintendo, and there was one more. Not Harry Potter.
Not Potter, interestingly enough.
No, I can't remember. Well, I know they're going to do more with that area, with that whole. Oh, Minions! It was Minions.
Oh, that's right.
They want to do a Minions area, and they want to do Nintendo, and one of those areas is going where Madagascar is currently, and the other one is going to be overall expansion. And then they're not going to do Harry Potter, but I still think they've got more. I mean, all the details on that are pretty murky right now, but we know what's happening in the next 5 years. So that's going to be exciting. I just think Universal is...
I mean, on the topic of Universal's Singapore and Epic Universe, that space-themed coaster in the hub, it is not known what it is, but it is a racing coaster. And I hope that Universal pulls the plug and opens the floodgates on Battlestar Galactica.
You mean pulls the trigger?
Yes, pulls the trigger. And opens the floodgates to all Battlestar Galactica stuff to just take over Universal. It's one of their strongest franchises.
If Disney can build a Tron roller coaster, then it's not out of the ordinary, or it's not out of the question to say, give us the Battlestar Galactica coaster from Singapore. I don't care if it's a clone or if it's the same theme and some other execution.
One thing that's interesting about Universal that they don't in the US parks anyway, don't have like a specific sci-fi area. I feel like every freaking theme park has a sci-fi area.
Yeah.
Or especially the major resorts around the world. So I'm like, whether it's the Tomorrowlands of the globe or whether it's the Battlestar Galactica in Singapore, there really isn't anything like super
Sci-fi
sci-fi.
for
Besides like
Universal.
Men in Black, if you know,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a weird aesthetic.
Well,
but
I think Marvel Superhero Island is kind of like their answer to that because it's a lot of like science when it comes to.
it just feels so comic-y.
Yeah, now it doesn't. With what Singapore and Beijing did, you can look back at Marvel Superhero Island and say this was the prototype for Sci-Fi City and for Transformers Metro Base, which are the obvious sci-fi
Lands
designated
of the newer
lands for
parks.
these parks. And even like Transformers, which is the headliner for both of these sci-fi themed areas in the Asian parks, is just a ride plunked down in the middle of Universal Studios, Florida.
Yeah, so like I feel like one thing that really lacks. I mean, the biggest genre in movie making, one of the biggest genres in movie making is sci-fi, and I think Universal, they own Battlestar, and it's a really strong sci-fi series. And I think, again, if anyone wonders, number 1 rated on Rotten Tomatoes for best sci-fi ever.
Yeah.
Anyways, I really think that they need to jump on that and be like, hey, there is currently developments for more Battlestar Galactica media for Peacock. So I would love for them to open a Battlestar Galactica ride. It doesn't have to be a whole area, but just like build a ride and represent that franchise. Do something a little more sci-fi, because I just wish there was more sci-fi.
Even Jurassic Park is science fiction, but it's not.
Well, I mean,
spacey.
Sci-fi. I guess that, like, yeah, I should specify that
I want it to
sci-fi.
be
I mean, like
rocket
space
ships.
sci-fi.
It needs to be in space.
Yes. Space sci-fi.
Yes.
Yeah, space sci-fi. That's what I need.
Yeah.
What else do you need from that park? Or is that it?
I think on the list of needs, those are the needs. There's plenty of wants.
There's a lot of ones.
There's a lot of wants.
I could do a whole episode that's called My Epic Universe.
Yeah. First of all,
Sean's
new name.
Epic Universe.
Yeah. The name is different. Battlestar Galactica is the centerpiece.
Yeah, there's a crashed Battlestar
Yeah.
in the Central Lagoon, from which Cylons on the red coaster track fly out. You know, it's too much.
Yeah.
We'll do it another time.
Okay.
And this is the end of season 3. Sam couldn't be here because our schedules just didn't line up. You know, busy times, busy world, busy work
Sam will be
schedules.
back.
But Sam will be back on the season launch of season 4, launching as of right now, first week of December. We will obviously announce the topics, what's going on, all the kind of good stuff. We're also launching a new mini-sode series. So we're going to take 26 coasters from around the world, randomly A through Z, and kind of take a quick look at what makes them unique, what makes them different, if we have a personal story behind them. I think it'll be a different, fun approach. You kind of do something a little more unconventional, a little more, a little different. You know, we're not just doing a news section. We're just taking a ride and we're just going to talk about it a little bit, and maybe either you learn something or either you kind of learn something about us. And I think it's going to be an exciting aspect of season 4. And in between then, we'll have a couple trips planned. Of course, we'll do some more theme parks. Hopefully we're done with making our house complete.
Yeah.
And
I'm so ready for our free time to go back to what it has been.
yeah, I'm looking forward to going to parks several times a week versus like building houses and furnitures and
Yeah.
lights and dealing with like appliances. But you know,
Being a plumber, being an electrician, being a magician.
all that
Being
sort
a
of
fortune teller.
thing. Fortune telling part for me. So yeah, that was it for season 3. Thank you guys so much for joining. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you
See you
in
next
2 months.
season.
Bye.
Bye.